When COVID-19 shut down the global economy in early 2020, governments were forced into action. Public health emergencies collided with economic crises. Jobs were lost, businesses shattered, and financial systems strained. Across the G7, the choices countries made in that moment shaped everything that followed. This video takes a detailed look at how those choices played out, with a focus on Canada. Has Canada been a top performer, or have critics been right to question its path? Let's find out. Every G7 country, Canada, the US, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and Japan, faced the same storm. But their strategies varied. Some leaned heavily on government spending. Others relied on monetary easing and central banks. Some focused on stimulus checks, others on wage subsidies. And some simply did too little, too late. The outcomes? Mixed. Canada acted fast. It launched over $100 billion in direct support, about 4.2% of GDP, focused on individuals and small businesses. Programs like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, CEWS, and Canada Recovery Benefit, CRB, helped maintain consumer demand and protect livelihoods. By 2023, Canada's GDP had grown by 1.1%, and over 1.1 million jobs had been recovered, one of the fastest rebounds in the G7. In fact, Canada exceeded its pre-pandemic employment baseline, outpacing the US, UK, and even Germany in job recovery speed. But the real test came with inflation. Inflation in Canada peaked at 8.1% in mid-2022, similar to peers, but fell to 2.8% by early 2024, returning close to the Bank of Canada's target. This was achieved through timely rate hikes and coordinated fiscal tightening, without triggering a recession. Compare that to the United States. The US implemented massive stimulus, over $5 trillion USD across 2020-21. This led to fast GDP growth, but also the highest inflation among G7 countries, peaking above 9%. The Federal Reserve reacted with sharp interest rate hikes, which slowed investment, hurt housing markets, and increased borrowing costs. Despite impressive GDP figures, the US entered 2024 with a deficit to GDP ratio of 7.6%, one of the highest in the G7. Canada, by contrast, held its ratio at just 2%, tied with Germany for the lowest. The UK faced unique challenges: COVID, then Brexit, then political instability. Economic growth was sluggish, just 0.5% in early 2025. While inflation returned to 2%, the Bank of England had already pushed interest rates high to stabilize prices, stalling recovery. Canada avoided this economic seesaw with more consistent fiscal managing and earlier intervention. Germany kept spending lean, focusing instead on industrial resilience and supply chain recovery. It matched Canada in deficit control, but lagged in job recovery and real GDP growth. France, while more generous with spending, struggled with persistent inflation and slower labor market recovery. Its debt-to-GDP ratio remains one of the highest in the Eurozone. Japan used a conservative mix of subsidies and stimulus but struggled with an aging population and low growth. Italy, long burdened with high debt, focused on EU-backed recovery funds. Both economies grew slowly and faced structural constraints Canada didn't have. Let's break it down with three critical indicators. GDP growth, 2023, Canada at 1.1%, outperforming Germany and the UK. Inflation, 2024, Canada down to 2.8%, a successful soft landing. Deficit to GDP, 2024, Canada at 2%, among the lowest in the G7. This visual shows how Canada ranked consistently well across key economic metrics. And when we rank each nation by debt, inflation, and interest rate management, Canada remains among the top performers. It's easy to be critical when prices rise or deficits appear on headlines. But Canada's response wasn't about doing nothing, it was about doing the right things at the right time. Critics may point to government spending, but ignore that inflation fell, employment surged, and fiscal ratios stayed stable. Others claim Canada lagged in GDP, but forget that growth without stability can be short-lived. Canada focused on sustainability, not just speed. In a post-COVID world of economic chaos and political uncertainty, Canada struck a rare balance, supporting people without overextending debt, controlling inflation without killing growth, rebuilding jobs faster than most of the developed world. This wasn't accidental. It was policy. And it worked. Canada's post-COVID performance deserves recognition, not just defensiveness. It shows that calm, coordinated leadership can outperform bold, chaotic reactions. And as we look forward, it's this kind of leadership that economies everywhere could learn from.